winner is Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins.
America's highest honor for a career in film, the AFI Life Achievement Award, a tribute to Julie Andrews.
Behind her flawless face, she concealed a secret she guarded for 60 years, making her Hollywood nanny ideal. Now that she's 89 years old, Julie Andrews is finally letting everyone in on the truth about her career-ending surgical blunder, her marriage to Blake Edwards, the terrible incident that caused her voice to go away, and the devastating revelation about her deepest regret. The secret she has kept all these years will shock you. On October 1st, 1935, Julie Andrews' birth name was Julia Elizabeth Wells. Edward Charles Wells was a teacher, and Barbara Ward Morris was a gifted pianist whose ambitions included performing on stage. When World War II broke out in 1943, their marriage came to an end. After that, Barbara tied the knot with vaudeville star Ted Andrews, who was born in Canada. For young Julie, this marriage was a game-changer. While Ted and Barbara entertained soldiers around England, Julie was exposed to the performing arts. She finally learned the truth about her father, Edward Wells, when she was 14 years old. He was not her real father. Her mother's liaison with a close relative made him the biological father of Julie. Although the news was devastating, it had little effect on her relationship with Edward Wells, and they stayed close throughout his life. Her training as a musician was greatly influenced by her stepfather, Ted Andrews. Her exceptional voice, with its flawless pitch and vocal range that beyond that of most youngsters her age, became immediately apparent to him. He was her first music instructor and a major influence on her development as a performer. Her ancestry was rich with musicians and performers. A relative was a concert pianist, and her Aunt Joan ran a dancing studio. People who valued the arts were always around Julie, even when she was a tiny girl. When she showed early indications of brilliance, it was expected. She started taking lessons from the renowned concert soprano Madame Lillian Stiles Allen when she was 8 years old, marking the beginning of her official training. Julie was a once-in-a-lifetime talent in Stiles Allen's eyes. She frequently compared Julie to the legendary opera singer Adelina Patti, who lived in the 19th century. Her training was rigorous, with an emphasis on expressiveness and impeccable pronunciation. The amateur works until he can get it right. The professional works until he cannot go wrong. This was a statement that she often told Julie, and Julie took it to heart, training relentlessly. Julie made the arduous journey from London to Leeds on her own to take Stiles Allen's rigorous lessons. In a home illuminated only by gas lamps, she remained in a frigid chamber. She relished each moment, no matter how challenging the circumstances. In the evenings, she and her teacher would sip ginger beer that they had brewed themselves while listening to anecdotes about famous musicians. During this time, she developed her voice and self-control. Until her 1954 migration to the United States, she remained with Stiles Allen. When Julie was 12 years old, she got her big break. Starlight Roof, a musical revue, was her professional debut performance, which took place at the London Hippodrome on October 22, 1947. Jesuit Titania, a difficult aria from Minong's opera, was sung by her. She was met with a standing ovation from the startled audience. Already at the tender age of 12, she had the stage presence of an accomplished actress. Julie gained famous as Britain's youngest prima donna throughout the course of the show's more than a year run. At the Royal Command Variety performance in 1948 at the London Palladium, she entertained King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. At 13 years old, she was the youngest solo artist to ever grace the stage. They met in the course of her performance in Starlight Roof, and Wally Bowe is a famous American comic who makes balloon animals live on stage. He frequently enlisted the aid of children in his performances. As the sun went down, a little Julie got on stage and started singing. The audience adored the event since it was entirely spontaneous. It was a fleeting but memorable instance that showcased her inherent charisma. At the tender age of 13, Julie made her formal West End debut in 1948. Aladdin and Humpty Dumpty were among the musicals and pantomimes in which she appeared. During this time, portraying Cinderella was a defining occasion. It demonstrated her acting chops in addition to her singing abilities. She had the ability to make a character come alive with her charisma and humor, setting her apart from other young actors. Also at this period, she began to receive airtime on both radio and television. Up the Pole and Educating Archie were only two of the BBC shows where she became a regular. She honed her hilarious timing through these encounters. The self-assurance and training she received from performing with seasoned performers at such a young age were foundational to her success as an entertainer. The Boyfriend, which Julie Andrews performed in for the first time on September 30th, 1954, at the Royale Theatre, marked her Broadway debut at the tender age of 19. She portrayed the role of Polly Brown, a 1920s French Riviera girl who fantasizes about love. Even though the performance was successful in London, Andrews made it even more spectacular on Broadway. Her easy charisma and crystal-clear voice made her hard to miss. When she made her Broadway debut in 1955, critics took note and gave her the Theatre World Award for Outstanding Debut. A number of notable figures were captivated by her performance as well. Casting for the role of Eliza Doolittle, a Cockney flower girl who becomes a refined lady, was an audition for My Fair Lady. They sought an actor or singer capable of delving into the role's complex emotions and demanding song repertoire. After casting Andrews, the musical premiered on Broadway on March 15, 1956. As she performed night after night, the crowd witnessed her transformation from clumsy and unruly to elegant and exquisite. The likes of I Could Have Danced All Night and Wouldn't It Be Loverly went on to become timeless classics overnight. At the time, it was one of the longest-running musicals on Broadway, having played 2,717 performances. Andrews received her first Tony Award nomination for her performance in a musical. Many people are unaware that she wasn't Eliza's initial pick. The part was first given to the more famous Mary Martin, but she declined. For Andrews, the choice was life-altering. Hollywood, however, had other intentions, regardless of her accomplishment. The film adaptation of My Fair Lady starred Audrey Hepburn rather than Julie Andrews. Andrews had already demonstrated her ability to sing the songs perfectly, but the choice to have another vocalist dubbed Hepburn's voice was contentious. Many thought Andrews would have been a better fit for the part, but she went on to much greater things. She played the role of Queen Guinevere in the musical Camelot, which was set in the fabled realm of King Arthur on December 3, 1960. Robert Goulet played Lancelot, and she co-starred with Richard Burton as Arthur. Drama, romance, and tragic endings were all part of the play. She was more than just a romantic interest because to Andrews's sophisticated performance. Her performance in the musical brought her yet another Tony nomination. Camelot became associated with John F. Kennedy's administration about this period. After his 1963 murder, Jacqueline Kennedy, his widow, drew parallels between his leadership and the tale of King Arthur's realm, describing it as one brief, shining moment. Suddenly, the musical had a new significance, and Andrews' involvement in it became a part of that enduring legacy. Andrews had already branched out from Broadway before Hollywood came knocking. She was the lead in a live CBS broadcast of Cinderella, a musical by Rodgers and Hammerstein, on March 31, 1957. Written from the ground up for television, this musical was not a reimagining of an earlier work. Over half of America's population, over 107 million people, turned in their TV sets to watch. It was a huge hit, and Andrews produced a stunning, heartfelt performance. She was nominated for Best Single Performance by an Actress at the Primetime Emmys, and the songs became popular. She was prepared to star in her film debut in 1964. Finding the right actress to portray Mary Poppins has been a long-term goal for Walt Disney. Someone with a commanding presence, a charming singing voice, and an underlying air of mischief was what he was looking for. Andrews possessed every conceivable asset. The picture made $31 million when it opened on August 27, 1964, and it was an enormous hit. Her renditions of A Spoonful of Sugar and Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious were so faultless that they went on to become classics. Best Actress was the Oscar that Andrews earned at the 37th Academy Awards in 1965. Not only did she emerge victorious, but she also defeated her former My Fair Lady co-star, Audrey Hepburn. This was a watershed point in her career. Hollywood clearly misjudged her, as evidenced by her victory. Even more attention was paid to her subsequent feature picture. With a global revenue of $286 million, The Sound of Music surpassed all previous box office records after its debut on March 2, 1965. The role she performed was that of Maria von Trapp, a former nun and governess who uses music to improve the life of a family in Austria. Based on a real story, Andrews gave Maria a genuine performance, making her warm, resilient, and joyful. The first shot, in which she spins around a mountainside, was breathtaking to look at, but a nightmare to shoot. The photo was taken from a helicopter, and the wind from the blades of the aircraft kept bringing her down to the floor. She made a joke later on about how she was stomped on after each take. Andrews became one of Hollywood's most marketable stars after the picture won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. However, there was a catch. Her previous roles as 2 adored nannies had many scared that she would become typecast. There was more she needed to do, and she knew it. In the Americanization of Emily, which she co-starred with James Garner later that year, she portrayed a quite different type of character. Taking place during World War II, this film offered a scathing and occasionally sinister critique of patriotism and the conflict. The role of Emily Barham, a British widow who develops feelings for an American naval man, was performed by Andrews. She demonstrated that she could perform in genres other than musicals with her first significant dramatic role. Shortly after, Alfred Hitchcock's Cold War thriller Torn Curtain opened. Paul Newman and Julie Andrews co-starred in the July 14, 1966 release. Universal Pictures was adamant on starring 2 A-listers in order to guarantee financial success. On the other hand, Hitchcock was supposedly dissatisfied because he thought the 2 performers were overly staged for the realistic espionage thriller he had in mind. Despite the film's negative reviews, it was a commercial success, earning $13 million worldwide on a budget of $3 million. Andrews tackled the historical epic play Hawaii, written by James Michener, later that year. It had the largest budget of any film at the time, $15 million, and was released on October 10, 1966. It surpassed all other films of the year in terms of domestic box office receipts, earning $34.5 million. Andrews portrayed Jerusha Bramley Hale, a 19th-century Hawaiian woman who accompanies her husband on his missionary journey. The crew had to deal with tidal wave warnings and heavy rains, which caused several delays throughout filming. The picture nonetheless managed to get 7 Oscar nominations despite all the obstacles. The unexpected spotlight on first-time actor Jocelyn Lagarde, who portrayed a Queen of Hawaii, was one of the show's most surprising consequences. She won a Golden Globe despite never having acted before. Andrews may have been the film's main attraction, but Lagarde's turn still garnered a lot of attention. Among Hollywood's top stars, Julie Andrews was. She became famous with her roles in Mary Poppins, 1964, and The Sound of Music, 1965. She possessed charisma, skill, and a devoted fan base. Things began to shift, though, in the late 1960s. Her career was almost crippled by 2 films. In 1968, there came Star, a lavish biography about the legendary theater actress Gertrude Lawrence. With Robert Wise at the helm, he had previously directed The Sound of Music, and a whopping $14 million, a tremendous sum for the era. The picture had all the makings of a smashing success. However, an error occurred. Critics panned Andrews' performance, praising her innate charisma, but criticizing her for being overdone in her acting. One of the most costly flops in Hollywood history, the picture failed at the box office. Her husband, director Blake Edwards, followed in 1970 with Darling Lily. Reshoots took forever, and the film's budget increased to $25 million, 2 more issues. Andrews attempted a comeback, startling viewers who had previously viewed her as a sweet figure with her first on-screen swearing and a striptease in one sequence. But it backfired. The picture bombed. Viewers didn't relate. And her reign as Hollywood's leading musical star came to an end as a result of the massive disaster. Andrews somehow received Golden Globe nods for both films despite their flops. She maintained her respect, but it couldn't alter the fact that Hollywood had already moved on, and she would need to adjust her game if she was to remain relevant. For solace, she flipped on the TV. She began showcasing her abilities outside of musicals with the 1972 premiere of The Julie Andrews Hour, a variety show. ABC was so confident in her that they granted her an unusually long contract, 5 years. September 13, 1972 was the launch date of the program. Comedy, surprise guests, and musical performances from her film and Broadway careers were all part of the show. Her charisma, singing voice, and versatility were all lauded by critics who thought it was fantastic. However, the ratings revealed another narrative. The show had a hard time drawing in viewers since it ran on Wednesday nights, right among other prominent programs. The show was canceled by ABC in April 1973 after only 1 season and 24 episodes. Then an unforeseen event occurred. The Julie Andrews Hour ruled the Emmys a month later. Out of 10 nominations, 7 were granted, with Outstanding Variety Musical Series being one of them. Despite the show's many accolades, it had already ended. 5 variety programs were provided to Andrews by ABC from 1973 to 1975 as compensation for the cancellation. Although there was a slight solace, it was evident that her future did not lie in television. She wanted a fresh start, so she did something unexpected. She started going to nightclubs. This was a surprising step for the most beloved nanny and governess in the world. Jazz singers and edgy comedians were the nightlife's renown, not ex-Disney stars. But that was her driving force, the need to shed her previous self-perception. A different side of Andrews was on display in these shows. She gave hilarious comments about Hollywood, sung jazz classics, and even made fun of her own acting career. She was admired by audiences for her humor, sophistication, and versatility, which allowed her to transcend her role as a musical theater star. Her skill in blending Broadway songs with jazz arrangements was highly lauded by critics. Her career was revitalized by her appearances in nightclubs. Then, in 1979, she returned to the spotlight after a hiatus of over 10 years. In Blake Edwards' romantic comedy 10, which also featured Bo Derek and Dudley Moore, she had a leading role. With nearly $74 million at the box office, the picture was a huge success. That was precisely what Andrews required. 2 more daring features followed. Andrews startled spectators in 1981's S.O.B., a parody on Hollywood, by going topless in one scene, something no one had anticipated from her. It showed that she wasn't afraid to get out of her shell and try new things. Next, in 1982, she starred in Victor Victoria, a film that radically altered her professional trajectory. She portrayed the role of Victoria Grant, a poor singer who performs in Parisian nightclubs as Count Victor Grzinski, a male impersonator. The character broke new ground by delving into sexuality and gender identity in a manner that Hollywood had hardly done before. Fans who had previously recognized her as Maria von Trapp now witnessed her enacting a multifaceted and courageous role. The picture made $28 million in the U.S. and was well received by critics. In addition to her Best Actress Oscar nomination, Andrews took up the Golden Globe for her work in a comedic or musical. There were 7 nominations for the picture at the Oscars. Even more crucially, it altered public perception of Andrews. She had grown beyond her character as the innocent singing governess and could now play strong, unconventional parts. Notoriety was never the only focus of Julie Andrews' life. She built a remarkable career while juggling love, heartache, and personal hardships. Set and costume designer Tony Walton, who had liked her since she was a little girl, proposed to her in 1959. They first crossed paths when Walton, then 11 years old, went to see one of her performances. Their friendship blossomed into love after a few years. Walton even created the costumes for one of Andrews' most renowned films, Mary Poppins, during their creative marriage. Emma Walton Hamilton was born to them in 1962. Despite appearances, there was a price to pay for success. Between his work on Broadway and his time in Hollywood, Andrews was never idle. Due to the strain of being apart, they finalized their divorce in 1967. Andrews's emotional well was depleted after the separation. Her life was forever altered when she decided to seek treatment. She heeded director Mike Nichols' advice and sought therapy. She found clarity, and the will to keep going after therapy helped her cope with the clutter and garbage in her mind. Years later, she shared her tale freely in the hopes that it might inspire others to talk about mental health. She unexpectedly crossed paths with filmmaker Blake Edwards outside of a therapist's office shortly after her divorce. It was a beautifully Hollywood moment, as Edwards put it later. They hit it off right away. After experiencing the heartbreak of a broken marriage, they discovered solace in one another. They were just 13 years apart in age, yet their friendship blossomed just the same. They tied the knot in 1969. A touch of Hollywood glitz and a profound bond defined their existence together. In the mid-1970s, Andrews became a stepmother to the children of Edwards. They adopted 2 Vietnamese girls, Amy and Joanna, from that country. In their professional lives, they collaborated on 7 features, such as S.O.B., 1981, and Victor Victoria, 1982. Darling Lily was one of those films that bombed at the box office, but they stuck together anyhow. According to Andrews, Edwards' sense of humor helped to level her out. His death in 2010 ended their 41-year marriage. Their marriage, she continued to say even after he passed away, was a genuine love tale. Both her professional life and her personal life underwent changes. There were new difficulties in the 1980s. The character of a singer battling cancer in That's Life, 1986, was personal for her as she had a tumor discovered on her neck at the same time. Aging, relationships, and dread of the unknown were all themes in the picture. Duet for One, in which she portrayed a renowned violinist with MS, was released that very year. The film's profundity was enhanced by Liam Neeson's dramatic performance, and she had the opportunity to collaborate with him on a raw and emotional narrative. She proved she was more than simply a singing sensation by earning Golden Globe nominations for both parts. During the 1990s, Andrews dabbled with television. In the 1992 comedy Julie, she played a TV celebrity who, after marrying a veterinarian, relocates to a small village. The program, which Blake Edwards directed, was terminated after just 7 episodes because it failed to attract an audience. Despite the series' failure, Andrews achieved success in other endeavors. In 1987, Julie Andrews won 5 Emmys for The Sound of Christmas. In 1989, she and Carol Burnett were back together again for Julie and Carol. Together, again. Her performance in Julie Andrews in Concert in 1990 brought her star power back to the masses. She returned to Broadway in 1993 after a 30-year hiatus. The relationship and regret-themed Stephen Sondheim extravaganza Putting It Together featured her as the lead. An important comeback was celebrated by a little off-Broadway play that ran for just 59 performances. Broadway staged a musical based on her 1982 film Victor Victoria, which she performed in 2 years afterwards. She portrayed the character of Victoria Grant, a female impersonator who performs under the assumed identity of a guy. With almost 700 performances under its belt, the musical was certainly a smashing success. She received a Tony Award nomination for Victor Victoria in the same year. However, she took a daring decision. She turned down the nomination after realizing she was the only cast member acknowledged. It wasn't because she was proud or resentful. She just thought the whole ensemble should get some credit. It revealed Andrews' character and was an unusual occurrence in Broadway history. With 2001's The Princess Diaries, Julie Andrews made her long-awaited return to Disney after a 37-year absence. Anne Hathaway's character was helped along by her character Queen Clarice Rinaldi, who was portrayed by her. Gary Marshall, the director, knew she was ideal for the part and cast her without having her audition. Following her Academy Award-winning 1964 picture Mary Poppins, this marked her return to Disney Cinematic Universe. One of her most adored characters, Queen Clarice, was brought to life by her charming and humorous performance. Even though she said Hathaway didn't require much supervision, she still coached her on set. With a global revenue of $165 million, the picture was a smashing success. Despite Andrews' loss of her singing voice due to surgery in 1997, she managed to sneak in a rare musical number in The Princess Diaries 2, Royal Engagement, 2004. In Shrek 2, 2004, she provided the voice of Fiona's mother, Queen Lillian, who is both supportive and kind. She taped scenes with John Cleese, which made their on-screen chemistry more realistic, unlike other animated films. After the first two Shrek films, 2007's Shrek the Third and 2010's Shrek Forever After were huge hits throughout the world, Andrews returned for a third. A Disney picture that blended fairy stories with the actual world, Enchanted, was narrated by her in 2007. She bridged the gap between traditional and contemporary Disney narrative with her enchanting voice. More than $340 million was made globally by the film. In Tooth Fairy, 2010, she played Lily, the top fairy who leads Dwayne Johnson's character through an unexpected magical punishment in a comic ensemble picture. Andrews proved she could still excel in comedic family comedies with this $112 million box office smash. For the 60th anniversary of My Fair Lady in 2016, she oversaw a theatrical performance of the musical. Playing in a number of places after its debut at Sydney's Opera House, the production went on tour. She made sure it paid homage to the original by making use of vintage designs for the sets and costumes. The show was a smashing success, earning rave reviews and breaking box office records. She co-created and hosted the 2017 Netflix educational series Julie's Green Room, which taught kids about the theater. Idina Menzel and Alec Baldwin were among the famous visitors on the show, which was a family affair thanks to Emma Walton Hamilton's role as co-producer. The show was nominated for 2 Daytime Emmys. The voice of Julie Andrews was Enchanted. Her iconic 4-octave soprano voice was a key component of Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music. However, by 1995 an issue had arisen. Her voice began to trouble while she was singing Victor Victoria on Broadway. At first it was only hoarseness, the type that goes away with sleep. However, this time, it persisted. In 1997, a lesion was discovered on her voice cords by the physicians. Some people thought it was a benign polyp, while others thought it was a non-cancerous nodule. Years of singing had worn her down. She desired a concrete remedy despite the doctor's advice to rest. She had surgery at New York's Mount Sinai Hospital in June 1997. Taking out the lesion and getting her voice back to normal was meant to be an easy surgery. Rather, it rendered her life irrevocably altered. Her voice cords were permanently scarred after the operation. The scar tissue prevented them from vibrating properly. She lost her strong, clear voice and found it impossible to talk at all. Surgery to repair the voice cords was less sophisticated in those days. Scarring was an issue with both the forceps and lasers utilized by certain doctors. In retrospect, Andrews claims that she was never adequately cautioned about the risks. Blake Edwards, her husband, made public statements regarding the incident in 1998. His worst nightmare had come true, he told her. She would never sing another note. When her voice died, it was as if a piece of her had died with it. She did anything about it in December 1999 when she sued the 2 doctors and Mount Sinai Hospital for malpractice. She claimed that the procedure had severely impaired her performance and that the true dangers had been concealed from her. Although a confidential settlement was reached in September 2000 for a sum that remains unknown, the harm had already been done. Seeking the following several years, she scoured the world seeking solutions. Beginning in the year 2000, she continued to see Dr. Stephen Zittles of Massachusetts General Hospital for a series of therapies that included 4 further procedures. Her singing voice never returned, although these surgeries did enhance her speaking voice a bit. She decided to devote herself to assisting others in 2002. Collaborating with faculty at MIT and Harvard Medical School, she funded innovative studies on voice restoration. In an effort to restore injured voice cords, researchers were investigating the use of tissue engineering and lasers. Even if the research couldn't assist her, she prayed it might help someone else. Despite everything, she remained steadfast. Writing became her new life's work. A children's book series was co-written by her and her daughter, Emma Walton Hamilton. However, the invisibility of her voice loss persisted through all her achievements. It was one of her most publicly expressed tragedies, and she has spoken frankly about it. Julie Andrews may have suffered a vocal cord injury, but her impact will live on in indelible memory.